Good morning and welcome to our opening session. Maybe everyone can find their seat. We'll start. You can't hear it? Good morning and welcome to our opening session. Maybe everyone can find their seats. We will start off our session with the singing of a national anthem. So please stand as Neil will sing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Yeah, again, welcome everyone. And thank you, Neil. As everyone may know, Neil is a Cochlear implant recipient, currently a college student here in Texas at UT Dallas. So thank you, Neil, for your contributions and your help with getting us started here. Again, would like to formally welcome everyone. As we all know, this is a special meeting for all of us who are in cochlear implantation, and it really brings together all the professional groups that are involved in helping us move the field forward with terms of clinical folks, scientists, surgeons, etc. So again, the community is really what is our strength in our field, and we would like to celebrate this community over the last three days. Advancements in the field has always been a focus of our meetings, but it's a special focus on today's meeting. We have several areas that we'd like to highlight with our invited speakers. One of them is, for example, CMV identification and CMV-related legislation that has been rolling out slowly, but will continue to roll out, for example. We also like to welcome folks from different backgrounds with different home languages, and we also would like to celebrate expanded indication as the field is continuing to expand and our indications will continue to expand. A special reference here to be made to single-sided deafness, cochlear implantation. We also like to welcome folks from around the world. We have numerous international participants, and we will continue to celebrate folks at our Friday morning meeting, moving the field forwards, where we also will talk some future work of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance as well as outcomes. At this point, I'd like to introduce Steve Rich. Stephen Lee Rich, really. Steve was one of our founding board members of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance. Steve has helped even past his 6-year board term helped us with operational and especially legal aspects of running the organization. And Steve and I recently had several phone calls. So Steve, again, is a founding board member of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance. And we would like to introduce him. Lee Reg has been active in supporting parents and professionals in various organizations. She's currently the director of All Ears Listening and Language Center in Houston, their home. Steve and Lee are parents of Anna, who was board deaf and an early bilateral cochlear implant recipients. We remember Anna, who was a little girl who always had her nose in a book. And again, Steve, maybe you can come here. Before Steve comes up, I omitted to show the slides. This is the current ACIA Board of Directors. Really, everyone almost is here today. These are the ACIA Alliance chairs of Board of Directors, starting with Dr. Niparko as the founding chairman, Dr. Craig Buckman, Dr. Colin Driscoll, Dr. Holcomb, and myself. And everyone's here. So if you see them in the hallway, maybe say a few words to them. These are the founding board members, again, Steve's being one of them. And if many of them are here today, so if you see them, please, again, find them, and maybe you can find a way to talk to them. Here are the faces of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance, meaning those are all previous board members. And being on the board, and having been on the board for 6 years myself, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of passion. Donna has been keeping us straight over all these years, but being on the board, again, is a real commitment. So if you see a former or current board member, maybe you can find time to chat with them. Again, I'd like to finally welcome Steve and Lee up here, and welcome to Texas.
Good morning and welcome to Texas, where everything is big. And by definition, if everything's going to be big, it's going to be louder, because Texas is loud. I think that the loudness of Texas is reflected in Davy Crockett, who made the decision that he would move from Kentucky to Texas, and this is what he said. Did it switch? Yeah, which one's green? Ah, there we go. There's Davy Crockett. You may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas. There's some other things that one can hear in Texas. I've got a slide of things that Texans love to hear. One of them, obviously, is OU sucks. That's for you, Teresa. My wife's favorite is, nice to meet you, I'm George Strait. And of course, what do we do in Texas when we hear a sound? Well, we point to our ear. And when we have access to sound, we have access to the world. We can dream of being a cowgirl. You see, it's not all about cowboys. It's never been all about cowboys. It's about cowgirls too. And now I need to get my mouse over here. Can the AV people put the sound on? This is a voicemail I received from Anna when she was 7. I don't see that. There it is.
Okay, leave your message. Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad. It's got all 7 books of Chronicles of Narnia. There's actually 7 books instead of only 3. Yes, and I'm so excited. See you later.
My favorite is the 2 kisses at the end. That's what we can do when we can access sound. we can access dreams, we can access to the world. I really have just 2 points in my remarks. Number one is going forward, when our children point to their ears, I think they should say, "Y'all hear that," instead of "I hear that." And number two, on a more serious note to the professionals, you are changing lives. I don't get to do that at work. I'm a lawyer. I've not changed BP yet. I've not changed Valero yet. But you do get to change lives. It's exciting on the one hand and it's humbling on the other, but it really matters. And what the ACIA does is it's a magnifier. And so in the years since it started, the work it's done has been truly profound. What I would say is that Donna and her 3 employees have made a Texas-sized impact. All right, Anna, now it's you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I am a bilateral cochlear implant recipient. I received my first implant at 18 months and my second at 6. I'm now a college student at the University of Houston. Can you?
Tell them what they have to do.
Oh, right, yes. When I read the next slide, please point to your ears and say, "Y'all hear that?" Because it's amazing news, especially to me as someone who is a CMV survivor. And
Here we go.
yeah, so Texas passed HB 2478, which is a huge victory.
Make them point to their ears. Make them point to their ears.
I didn't see anybody point to their ears. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Thank you very much. Welcome to Texas. Y'all have a great time while you're here.
So next I'd like to introduce Dr. Lazek and Dr. Moberly, who have led our conference committee for this conference. So the program is really their doing, and they represent the larger committee, but they interfaced on monthly phone calls with the rest of the board, or a liaison committee on the board. So they've done a fabulous job. They'll highlight the program in the next few minutes. So, and thanks for your hard work on this.
All right, I think I'm starting out. Hi, everybody. Woo! All right, clicker here. All right, that's us. Hi. All right. Next. Okay. So we're in person again, yay, for a second year after a long COVID break. Of course, we have many interdisciplinary sessions, which is fantastic, and really upholding and consistent with previous conferences. We have a really rigorous and relevant, hopefully clinically relevant, and also some rigorous research highlighting the latest in cochlear implants and technology and translation and collaboration. So our conference themes this year, we really do have a packed program. A lot of this really was feedback from previous conferences and last year, and what you all said you liked and what you wanted to see more of, and so we really appreciate that feedback. These are our conference themes this year, and you'll see those highlighted throughout the conference. And don't forget the poster session and then the welcome reception as well today. And then also don't forget Rehab Connect, which is Friday afternoon.
So we're really excited to have some great keynotes and Niparko lecture this year. So Dr. Brown's going to be speaking with us just in a little bit here about her experience at Iowa. Dr. Bunta is going to be talking about bilingual children with cochlear implants, and we're excited to hear that later today. And then Dr. Sanchez is going to talk about CMV. So these highlight some of our key themes of the conference through these, our keynotes and our Niparko.
We're just going to do the annoying thing where we hop back and forth. Okay. So again, this was really not just our doing. It really takes a team to sort of pull this all together. And it was really created with the whole program committee representing 14 institutions as shown there. We, of course, had monthly meetings. If you all are ever looking for an opportunity to get involved and really get to know your peers, this is an excellent opportunity to do so. We all together reviewed nearly 300 submitted abstracts from 150 different institutions representing 22 countries, and many of you also helped us to review those abstracts. So every time, when you submit an abstract to ACIA, it's reviewed by 4 or 5 different people, and it's all anonymous, and it takes a lot of work to coordinate that. So thank you to those who helped out with that as well. Oh, I said that in there, oops. And really what we also strive to do is really maintain balance and equity when trying to organize the program as well, to represent different countries and different institutions, and just give everybody a really broad perspective for the world of cochlear implants. I'd like to take time to thank the program committee members. So if you're here, please stand, and we'd like to acknowledge you. I see a couple of you out there, and I don't see you standing. So thank you very much. I was looking at you, Yvette. You're right there. Yeah, okay. Okay, so.
All right, a little more switch off. So we want to welcome you officially to Dallas. As your committee co-chairs, we wanted to do our due diligence. So we actually came about a week ago just to explore Dallas. We've been here really enjoying ourselves for, is it a week, 10 days now?
10 days,
10
yeah, I don't
days.
know.
So we've done a whole lot of stuff while we've been here. We're excited to kind of show you a couple things you may not know about Dallas.
So for those of you who don't know, and I hope this is accurate because this is just based on our research here, but number one, it's home of the first frozen margarita machine invented in 1971, for those of you who didn't know that.
You may not know that German chocolate cake is actually from Dallas, not from Germany, so that's really important. And Kara does a really nice, she's made several of these this week, so it's been great.
I actually did make one for my dad's birthday when I was younger, so that's kind of relevant. 7-Eleven was founded in Dallas in 1927. I like Aaron's red hair in this picture. It's very lovely. I'm not sure what happened to that. He got rid of that.
Yeah, I shaved it yesterday. This last one, so the Big Tex is the tallest cowboy in Texas. This guy's actually, he's weighs less than me, but it's still pretty impressive to see, so.
All right, and last but not least, the Dallas Zoo, which is one of the oldest. It's the oldest zoo in Texas and one of the oldest ones in the country, and opened up in 1888. So that's what we did over the past week before you guys got here.
So we're glad to have everyone here. We're excited to start the conference off, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, next up, Donna, our fearless executive director, will provide us with an update on what the ACIA has been doing.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for being here today. All right, I wanted to start and just give you a little bit of background about some special features that we have at the meeting, and we want to really encourage everybody to tweet and use your other social media networks. We have a hashtag. Hopefully you'll tag ACI Alliance in your posts, and do that with Twitter and Instagram as well. And we have a new feature, special interest groups, and these were totally motivated by requests from our members. So we have one on student mentorships, which is today. They're all at lunchtime, so people can just grab a lunchbox and go into the designated rooms. One for members with hearing loss, and one on adult rehabilitation. So we're really excited to have this new feature happening at the meeting, and hopefully it'll continue throughout the year. The most important thing I wanted to share with you is on our new initiative, and it's on listening, language, and literacy, which address the benefits of listening for language development. And it's something, obviously, that we all care about. Our community has not been forward enough or convincing enough in talking about that, and we've been eclipsed by those who say, without any research or data, that unless children have American Sign Language, ASL, they will be language deprived. And the use of that term has become very commonplace. How many of you have heard the term language deprivation used relative to children with hearing loss who don't use ASL and wondered what data exists to support this? There isn't any data. And the tactic has been useful for them and successful in creating confusion among parents. And it's also been picked up by the media, including institutions like National Public Radio. And the term has been the impetus for state and local legislation that's designed to limit parent decision-making on their child's language path. So to address this, ACI Alliance assembled a messaging task force comprised of parents, professionals from across the care continuum, university-based early intervention professionals, including those in federal programs, and adult cochlear implant recipients. And the charge was to develop a research-based message relative to listening and language in deaf and hard of hearing children. And we did not focus on children with profound hearing loss, nor those who had nor expected to receive cochlear implants. So my remarks this morning are a very brief summary of what we discussed during our 6 months long collaborative process. And if you come tomorrow, we'll tell you more at moving the field forward. So this is the message we developed together. And we really tried to pull together some research-based information relative to listening and language. And you may remember the 2015 book, 30 Million Words, authored by Dr. Dana Susskind, who's a cochlear implant surgeon in Chicago. And her emphasis was the most important thing you can do for your child's future is to talk to them. And Dr. Susskind began with a focus on this because many of her families were low SES families, but her focus quickly moved to all children who were from low SES families. And the term language nutrition that you can see on the slide was introduced to encourage families to talk to their children using rich language. A 2017 paper by pediatric nurses emphasized that a child's vocabulary at age 3 was the single strongest predictor of reading proficiency by 3rd grade, and that parents could impact their child's future simply by talking to them. And these important findings led us to emphasize the language of the home. In the case of children with hearing loss, this language of the home is linked also to literacy later in life. And listening allows children to hear the sounds of speech, facilitating reading and writing. And the importance of language nutrition in the home has not been incorporated into the early intervention system in America. And we want to change that. And the infographic shown here includes our logo. But the next time you see this, we're going to remove the logo and replace it with that picture of a father reading to his daughter, because we want this to be picked up by everyone. It's not going to belong to us, nor do we want it to be associated with cochlear implants. We want our entire community to begin using this infographic. These are the task force members that worked very hard on developing this messaging, and we wish to acknowledge and recognize their extraordinary efforts to work together to produce this. And as you can see, they're from across the care continuum. They're parents, they're individuals with hearing loss, including 2 people with cochlear implants. So the next step is to implement it. And what happens next is up to all of us. And we're offering a multifaceted campaign of sharing information writing papers, impacting public policy, reaching the media, and posting on social networks. Come tomorrow to Moving the Field Forward when I have a bit more time, and we can see how together we can support families in moving forward. One more quick initiative to tell you about, and that is our effort on FDA labeling for single-sided children under age 5. And the current labeling we're all finding is negatively impacting insurance approval. And there has been, to date, limited research on children under age 5 who are single-sided deaf. And the FDA actually is open to consideration of a process that uses real-world data in CI, manufacturer submissions. So our research committee is working on this, and they will be coordinating data from both in and outside of the United States to support these efforts by the CI manufacturers. And our objective is to change the labeling to facilitate access for all children. So again, come tomorrow to learn more. And actually, I want to go back and add one more item. Oliver mentioned a new initiative that just happened this week. Senator Blumenthal introduced legislation, or will be introducing legislation, to initiate screening for CMV at the national level. And legislation passed in his home state of Connecticut earlier this week. This is an area where our state champions and members have worked very hard at increasing awareness about CMV and its links to hearing loss. And we are very excited to be supporting the senator's efforts going forward. So you'll hear more about that, but we're very proud to have been part of that effort. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Donna. So certainly a lot going on in the ACIA, and there are a lot of efforts. Next up is our Lifetime Achievement Award, the 5th time we are awarding this. The recipient this year is a special person to Cochlear Implantation, a special person to myself and several of us in the room. Dr. Peter Rowland is a cochlear implant pioneer who was initially involved with the provision of cochlear implantation at the first, FDA approval in the mid-1980s. He has continually advanced the interest and experience of electroacoustic hearing, bilateral use of cochlear implantation, the benefits of cochlear implantation for all age groups, and he's really been at the forefront of the field ever since. Prior to his retirement, he was the chairman here at the Department of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery in Dallas, and at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. He was also the chief of pediatric otology at Children's Medical Center, again here in town. Peter received his medical degree from the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston and completed his otolaryngology residence at Penn State. He subsequently spent 4 years in the United States Navy. He was stationed in Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland. And during his tour in the Navy, he was on faculty of the Uniformed Services, the University of Health Sciences, and served as a consultant to the National Institute of Health. Peter authored over 150 publications on ear surgery, cochlear implantations, hearing loss, balance issues, facial nerve injuries, acoustic tumors, and tumors of the skull base. Beyond his impressive contributions, it's really, I encourage you all to meet Peter. He's well known for his boundless sense of humor, his breadth of knowledge of art history, literacy, and philosophy. Peter helped me personally a lot when I came to this country, and I know he helped many of you in the audience here. And at this point, I'd like for you to welcome Peter Rowland as our 5th Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Congratulations. They want us to take a photo here. As part of the award, we will provide Peter with this customized clock that Donna and the staff organized. So thank you, Peter, for your contributions to the field and for being the pioneer that you have been over all those years. I don't know, do you want to say a few words? Or?
Thank you, Oliver, for that very generous introduction. As I look at it over this audience, I see lots of people who would merit an award like this, but I didn't really count myself among them, so I'm a little bit flabbergasted. However, it's a really wonderful note on which to wind down a career that I have truly loved, in part because of all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next up, we have the John Niparko Memorial Lecture. At this point, I would like to introduce Dr. Bruce Gans, who will provide an introduction of the Niparko Memorial Lecture. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Oliver. You know, the Niparko Lectureship was established by the ACIA board in 2017 to honor the legacy of John Niparko, who had a tremendous impact on our field and really was the founding member, along with Terry Zwollen, of this ACIA organization. This was his idea, and he really carried it through. John led a multi-center trial on language development in children with cochlear implants early on. That was very impactful, and was also responsible for the cost-effectiveness studies that CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare, that now covers the cost of cochlear implants, to be approved for payment, which was a big deal at that time. So today we have the pleasure of honoring Carolyn Brown, PhD. Carolyn will be the 6th Niparko lecturer, and I've had the great fortune and experience of knowing Carolyn throughout her entire academic career. She has, and I have observed the tremendous impact that she has had, along with her dear colleague Paul Abbas, on the field of cochlear implant, auditory electrophysiology, neuroscience. For those that don't know, Carolyn, along with Paul, are responsible for solving the electrical artifact problem that occurs when we attempted to measure the electrophysiologic response in cochlear implant patients. They reported their work in 2018. Whoop, I have to advance it.
The clicker is
Oh, wrong one. It's not going.
I'll do it for you.
There we go. Okay. So they reported their work in 2018, and they wrote an abstract. And at that time, we were not interested in the academic community in patenting anything we did. And so, unfortunately, their wonderful work, which allowed us in the late 80s to actually program prelingually deafened children safely, was eventually incorporated into all 3 major cochlear implant manufacturers. And they never received any recognition or compensation for that outstanding piece of work. Here is a picture of Paul's harem. This is from 1985. He had a wonderful cadre of people. This is Kathy Campbell. There's Carolyn on the left, the second person, Beth Preve, Nin Jing He from China, and Suzanne Purdy from New Zealand. And this group was extremely active. Paul was very observant and decided to employ Carolyn as a grad assistant and worked on our first cochlear implant clinical research center grant. And her role has evolved and to a major contributor into that grant over many years. And in 1995, she became a co-investigator. Unfortunately, Carolyn has decided to retire her position as chair of the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders at the University of Iowa College of Liberal Arts and back away from cochlear implant research at our center. Carolyn obtained her BS at the University of Iowa and MS from the University of Washington, and then returned to do her PhD with Paul in 1980, and received that PhD in 1989. She had a brief wanderlust and accepted a tenured position as an assistant professor at Arizona State University for only 2 years. She missed the excitement of Iowa City and the cochlear implant research that was going on there, and gave up a tenured position to come back to Iowa and work as a research assistant in a non-tenured role. She became a full professor in 1999 and chair of the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders in 2020. She has published over 90 articles and chapters and has been involved in our research for 38 years. More importantly, she has mentored 18 PhD students, many of you are in this room, and has been a member of 34 thesis committees, mostly involving electrophysiology in the auditory system. She has contributed to our cochlear implant research in many ways over the years, and I can tell you what I learned. The next slide. This is Carolyn in the late 80s, is that you never say no to Carolyn Brown, because you'll not get away until she makes a cogent argument and you say, of course. So it's a great honor to invite Carolyn to present the John Niparko Lecture.
Okay. First of all, Bruce, thank you for your kind introduction. And I want to thank the program committee in particular for inviting me to give this lecture. What an incredible honor. I was lucky to have had a chance to get to know John Niparko. He was an incredible scientist, physician, and human being. And it is really an honor to even be considered. And so thank you. So as Bruce mentioned, I spent pretty much my entire career at the University of Iowa. I did wander away for a couple years, but I came back. I started as a PhD student in 1983, and maybe we can get rid of that slide. Maybe I do this. I don't see the slides. That's going to be a problem. They should be there. Okay. Anyway, so I spent my entire career there, and for decades, oh, here we go. That's good. Okay, so that makes me feel better. And I moved from being just a research scientist over in otolaryngology to being a professor and being able to balance kind of research with teaching, and I loved that role over the years. And I taught the cochlear implant class. I think the very first cochlear implant class at Iowa was one that I initiated, and to this day, that has been really a joy. I'm so happy to see so many of my former students out there. It's really a rewarding thing. And who would have thought that 40 years after the P50 grant was funded, that funded me early on as a doctoral student, that it would still be running strong. It made my career, that opportunity to participate in that research really made my career. I'll always be thankful for the opportunities that it afforded me, but and more importantly, I'll be thankful for the people that I got to know along the way and love. So now what I want to do today is not focus on me, not focus on my career specifically, but what I hope to do was focus on the P50 itself and to use that device as a mechanism to kind of talk about the evolution of cochlear implants. History of cochlear implants was always my very favorite lecture when I taught, and I feel like it's what we lived here, and so that kind of is my goal today, or that is my goal today. Okay, so I have, oops, this is hard. Here we go, I just hold it up. So I have no disclosures of any kind or financial issues. So prior to, I wanted to start kind of at the very beginning. Prior to 1985, for those of you who were not born then, I want to tell you that in the early 80s, it was really tough for adults who had significant, profound sensory neural hearing loss. And it was tough for audiologists, and it was tough for otologists who work with those patients. I was working at the Long Beach VA for a while at this time. We would see patients with big losses come in. All we would do is really document the continued decline in their hearing because we had so little to offer these guys. Hearing aids were bulky, linear, peak clipping devices that often that had no feedback suppression. Ear molds had to be very tight. We stretched out ear canals. It was just a difficult time, and I put this picture here of a vibrotactile device because for some of them this was like an option that we could offer, which never worked well at all, but it was at least something that we could offer. I'm sure that the otologists at this time, the physicians at this time, were just as frustrated as we were as audiologists. Okay, so speaking of physicians at this time, during this era, in the 70s, Bill House was, as you know, developing a single-channel cochlear implant in California. In Iowa, Bruce Gantz, between 75 and 80, or 85, was a resident. And in 79, as a fifth-year resident, he must have been getting the buzz about cochlear implants, and he went to California to spend some time with Bill House to learn about CI surgery and to learn about the implant technology. He came back and implanted the first cochlear implant recipient at Iowa with a single-channel House 3M device, and this is a picture of her there. Bruce, the one who looks like he's maybe 12 there, is helping hook up or helping program the device. And for those of you who've been around for a while, this is Mary Lauder on the left, who was a key audiologist, adult audiologist. She and Holly Teagle were some of our two implant audiologists for many years and did a fabulous job. Gantz must have recognized the impact that this technology would have, and as a result, as a non-tenured assistant professor, he submitted a grant, not a R01, not a starter grant. He submitted a P50 grant, which is a big mechanism, and got it funded at over $3 million was the count that I found. So no doubt he was promoted and tenured the next day. He had joined the faculty. And this photo shows them, again, with our first CI recipient, okay? This is really the longest running NIH grant. Bruce has been a program director of that grant, now co-program directing with Marlon Hansen and Bob McMurray. Gantz served as, he is the only person who was on the implant grant in 1985 when it was first funded, who had a significant role in the implant grant, who is still active today, including myself, okay? But this talk is not about Bruce Gantz. It's really about the P50. So for those of you who don't know, and I suspect that's pretty few, this grant mechanism is designed to have 4 different projects, and each project is supposedly the equivalent of an R01, focusing in different areas and all kind of contributing to a larger picture. One of the important features is there's funding also provided, importantly, for patient care and data collection and all the other parts that go into the research process. And this mechanism for us has been particularly effective over the years. It would have been impossible, I think, to do it, to make the progress that we've had without this. So over the years, cochlear implant recipients changed, and over the years, our PIs changed. Now, I don't know if you can see the details on this slide, but this is showing all of the PIs on the individual sections of that grant from 1985 until today, and in fact, we just got refunded through 2028. There's some pretty famous names up here, and I don't have any intention of being able to hit all of these individuals, but I'm going to highlight a few of them who made some important contributions and illustrate changes in the field over time. I also want to note, importantly, that this grant funded many, many audiologists, postdocs, CFYs, PhD students, AUD students, research scientists, research assistants, residents, medical students, interns. It's a long list, impossible to count, and it has pushed the field forward in many ways and has been a really important and exciting activity for me over the years, okay? So the part I love the most is the very early parts of this grant, because I remember this pretty much like it was yesterday. And everything at that point was so new and so fresh. And the questions I love because they were really so simple. They were fundamental and they were really important. I found the paper copy of that first grant, and these were almost verbatim from the aims of that grant. We don't have aims in grants that are do cochlear implants work anymore. You don't see that. They're a little more flowery and they have a lot more detail in those grant sections. But this is what they were asking. Do cochlear implants work? Are multi-channel implants better than single-channel implants? Does performance improve over time? Right? This was all adults. They were profoundly deaf. If you heard one word accidentally on a word list, you weren't a candidate. You needed PTAs over 95 dBHL bilaterally, right? These guys were deaf as they could be. We had a psychologist who looked at psychological impact, but I think is really interesting is number 5. Are there physiologic, psychophysical, cognitive, behavioral measures that can predict outcome with the CI? Variance in cochlear implant recipients, which I know all of you are intimately aware of, from 0% to 100% on almost any test that you pull out, has always been an issue with this and remains today to be something that we try and focus on, even 40 years later. I think the other thing that I loved about this was the design of this grant. I don't think we could get away with this today. We actually were working with 3 devices, the House 3M device, which was the only FDA-approved device in 1985. It was a single channel, the InterAid device, and the Cochlear Corporation device. We were only seeing postlingually deafened adults, and what was kind of intriguing was that we provided the cochlear implant and the surgery for these patients at no charge, but we randomized which device they got. So they had a 1 in 3 chance of getting a single channel device. And the subjects agreed to return also, this is also amazing to me, for 10 days of testing by the different portions of this P50 grant every year for 5 years. And we had patients flying in from across the country. They were so desperate to hear again, which was really the thing at the time. This, I'm sure you'll recognize, is Rich Tyler, or you probably recognize, is Rich Tyler. Rich Tyler was one of the original PIs of the psychophysics and speech perception section of the cochlear implant. Rich was responsible, or at least one of the things that I think was his major contribution, was he was responsible for helping us develop ways to assess outcome in these really low-performing patients. We anticipated in 1985 that all an implant would do was provide assistance with lip reading, basically like a vibrotactile device was designed to do. And so we had to modify tests to be able to be, he had to modify testing so that they could be visual and auditory together, and so they could look at different components, how much was lip reading, how much was auditory. This is just an example of one of the figures. Again, these figures look a little dated now. But one of the things that it shows, the top row is the single channel devices, the second and third rows are the multi-channel nucleus and interarray devices, and the gray is with sound plus vision, stacked in front of those bars. The dark bar is vision alone. They're looking at enhancement of lip reading as their goal, and you can see the multi-channel devices, even in this very crude study, very underpowered study, are already showing significant differences relative to the single-channel device. And that was also true for open-set word testing, shown here. Again, single channels getting almost no open-set sound-only word recognition. And the other two devices, whether you do phoneme perception or whole word accuracy, we're doing much better on these adult devices. At this point, we pretty much discontinued the single channel device and later, a little bit later, when advanced bionics came out, started using that in our rotation as well. Now, also at this time, this is a more recent picture of Paul Abbas. The electrophysiology section that I spent a lot of time on was very active. The P50 ran. Paul has been the PI of this section for pretty much the entire duration of the grant, retiring recently. And our area and his training was in auditory physiology. I really was, one of the things that we were charged with doing and that we really hoped we could do was try and figure out how to test preoperatively to find out who would benefit from a cochlear implant and who would not, right? That was one of the things that we were wanting to find a metric that we could use to do that. Paul had always been testing animals. He had been doing animal research. I don't know that he had ever touched a human subject until he started on the grant. And I had some experience with ABR at the time, and so we kind of worked at trying to record electrically evoked auditory brainstem responses. That was also something that we didn't even know was going to be possible to do at the time. And in fact, what we wanted to do was do it with a promontory electrode. This is a picture, and I wish I had the real device, but we would take our patients to Bruce Gans. He would put a transtympanic electrode in onto the round window niche or close to the promontory. We had this contraption that held it in place. We put that patient in a wheelchair. We brought him back to the clinic, and we did psychophysical testing, and then we did ABR testing. And needless to say, our recipients remember that to this day, and we're not very happy. And I apologize to each and every one of them that I was a part of that. We ended that because it also, what we found was that extracochlear stimulation is really not effective. The current spreads everywhere but into the cochlea. These are ABRs from 3 different subjects. They have all different morphologies. They're really not useful. Even when we looked at post-implant, we started looking then at post-implant EABRs, and those were more repeatable. They made more sense. They were comparable to acoustic ABRs, but the problem with this technology was it required 2 computers at the time. It required subjects to sleep and be quiet. In many cases, it required 10 milligrams of Valium to do that. And so as a result, we knew that for pediatric clients who even in this really early time, in the early 80s, we knew they were the population coming forward. We knew that would be too challenging. And it really was not showing predictive value, which is what we were looking for. I was discouraged. And so the next thing that we did was I started thinking, honestly, about what we needed was a more direct measure from the auditory nerve. What we needed was something that was more direct. And we happened to have a set of patients who used the InnerAid device. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but it had a connection that went through the skin with 6 ball electrodes, no implanted electronics, that just were sitting in the cochlea. And I was like, well, we got direct access to the cochlea. Why don't we try using those electrodes? Why don't we modify the cord? Undoubtedly, there was no oversight from a biomedical community, but we modified the cord and we figured out a way to stimulate and record one electrode and record from another electrode in the cochlea. Only worked on these InnerAid patients because we had this access. And the problem, of course, for those of you who know anything about electrical stimulation with stimulus artifact was huge. And so I had read this article about how someone had done this in animal subjects and how they'd eliminated the stimulus artifact. And what do you know, it worked. And so on these 11 subjects we had access to at the time, we recorded electrically evoked compound action potentials. You can kind of see them there. This is directly out of the JASA article that came from this. They're not pretty, but they were there, and it was kind of an interesting exercise. We recorded growth functions, we recorded refractory recovery functions. The growth functions, we thought the slope would be correlated with how robust the nerve was. We thought the recovery functions would tell us something about temporal processing. Kind of makes sense. And these responses were big amplitude responses and were pretty easy to record. And early results showed correlations between these two. This never happens. And I was just like over the moon. This made me really excited. It got me a publication in JASA, and it got me a PhD, which was a good thing. So and then over time, as we added participants, the correlations dropped, and it's a little bit naive, I think, to think that a measure of the auditory nerve is going to correlate with speech perception, so much more of a cortical-generated response. I do think, though, that it had something to do with the fact that these patients were so very deaf that it made a difference in this population early on. But the Cochlear, more importantly, I think, is the CI companies took note, because these responses we could measure from directly inside the cochlea without muscle artifact, and the patients could sit there and eat their Happy Meal while they were being tested, right? So it was really a pediatric-friendly device, and I just kept thinking it has a lot of value here. At this time, the Cochlear device, there was no way to measure electrode impedance, for example. Neurotelemetry, adding the reverse neurotelemetry helped with many of those things. And in many ways, it was motivated, I think, by this kind of research that was going on, the importance of being able to tap into that function, I think. So during the next few years, so we're going to run out of time, and so I'm going to shorten this tremendously here, I think. During the next few years, cochlear implant technology and implant candidacy changed. You guys all know that. External processors got smaller. Advanced Bionics developed virtual channels. That was huge at the time. That was something I never thought would happen. Early intervention for pediatric CI users was really becoming standard of care. The age of implant was dropping. Binaural, bimodal fittings were starting to become a thing. Outcomes were continuing to improve, but this variance in outcome was always a really big deal. Okay, I'm going to fly through these. This is Kate, we're okay? Okay. Kate Gefeller was a PhD faculty member who studied music at the time. She was actually into music therapy. She was very interested in cochlear implants, and that was particularly true once we started experimenting with acoustic and electric hearing once we started doing hearing preservation devices. The same was true with Chris Turner. In that same period of time, Chris Turner also was a PI on the program project grant. He was a psychophysicist, and he knew a lot about speech perception, all localization, a lot about the importance of low-frequency acoustic hearing. And Bruce Gantz tells me that he was the first person that he talked to when he had this idea that maybe we could sneak an electrode into the cochlea and not kill the ear, not kill the rest of the structures in the ear. And it was that discussion with him that informed him about, that Chris informed him about how important it was, how important that low-frequency acoustic hearing, if you could preserve it, was for things like localization, speech and noise, and music. And both speech and noise and music, every one of you know better than I do, are two things that CI users often really struggle with. Importantly, it was early results with these hybrid devices that showed benefit. So on the left side of this graph, speech perception in quiet, if you use you can see 3 different lines. The lowest line, cochlear implant only, the hybrid device only, the hybrid device on one ear only, in the acoustic plus electric mode gave a bump up. But in addition, if you added the hearing aid on the other side, bimodal hearing with the acoustic electric device, again, performance improved. And the same basic thing in the other direction, because we're showing 50% point in terms of signal-to-noise ratio for sentence materials is shown here, okay? Hybrid users outperforming long electrode users on speech and noise tasks. This was really exciting. And for Kate Gefeller, who is also a musician, if you look here to the bars on the right, melody recognition, can you recognize the difference between happy birthday and another simple nursery rhyme kind of tune? And look at our long electrode users in the dark bars. If they weren't provided lyrics, most of those patients had a tremendous difficulty doing that. Normal hearing listeners could do all of these pretty easily, and there's our hybrid users. This combination of acoustic and electric had some legs here, I think, both for music and speech perception and background noise, which continues to be an issue for us yet till this day. Technology moves on. We started looking for methods of managing background noise, different ways of managing background noise than originally. We started continually improving or changing the candidacy criteria to match performance improvements and outcomes from the the implanted population. These are another 2 of our really exciting researchers on the P50 grant. This is In-Yun Choi and Tim Griffiths. These 2 are really world-class experts in neuroscience. Tim Griffiths from Newcastle in the United Kingdom. In-Yun Choi is an assistant professor at Iowa. They are kind of tackling this speech and noise thing from doing measurements cortically, focusing more on cortical processing, which I think is a really exciting way to go. This is a graph that just compares normal hearing listeners in terms of how well they can hear speech and background noise for 2 different signal-to-noise ratios. And you can see, as the signal-to-noise ratio becomes more challenging, performance declines. Same thing for the cochlear implant users, but look at the variance. Look at the variance here. And the range at which the signal-to-noise ratios they're showing there don't even overlap with those patients with normal hearing. It's a significant problem for these guys, and this variance is something that they're really wanting to try and understand. Why do some people in that cohort do so well, same device, and others do so poorly, okay? In-Yun did some physiologic measures. They do speech and noise and are trying to measure cortical responses. These are grand mean averages shown from patients who are divided as good performers versus poor performers. Low on that list of variance, the same, it's 90 plus cochlear implant users that they recorded these measures on. They turn the noise on initially. The response, they get an N1P2 response to the noise. They introduce a word in the background noise. The poor performers, that you can see the second N1P2 response in blue, is smaller and less robust than for the good performers. It gives them a way to kind of track difficulty, to get a measure, a metric of what's going on at the auditory cortex. These are all cochlear implant users. They're looking at the variability across the group here. Not only do they do just like I would have done, a grand mean average like that, they also do dense electrode recordings that can help them localize the points in the cortex itself that are actually contributing to these. The auditory cortex tends to be correlated with good performance early. The frontal cortex is what they see lighting up from the poor performers, and that tends to happen a little bit later. And they took it one more step further by also doing, on these same patients, PET imaging. PET imaging is just another way of looking at which areas in the brain are active. This is a really cool result showing that the activity in the auditory cortex is something that correlates with performance in a positive direction. The frontal cortex correlates with negative performance. Okay, now I'm going to end. I'm going to apologize to Marlon and Bruce. I'm going to say that the other most exciting thing that I think is coming out right now is really the iota motion device. Marlon is one of the people who's largely responsible for development of this device. It's a device that allows, for those of you who don't know, it's a device that allows a robot to insert the electrode into the cochlea. Hands, no matter how steady they are going to shake. You're going to have forces that vary against the structures in the cochlea. The iota motion device allows you to put in an electrode slowly and minimizes the forces on those cochlear structures, hopefully allowing for better outcomes, okay? I'm gonna go forward here. I had a couple videos and I'm happy to show them to you afterwards, but I wanna end because I know we're woefully behind, and I wanna tell you thank you. This is my last probably professional talk. It is my first talk as a professor emeritus, and I am so excited to be here. I am going to be watching what happens, what you guys do, maybe sitting in the back row next time you meet, and I'm going to be following you. You have really great people here. It's really an exciting thing. It's a technology that changes lives. It's a technology that changes careers. It's been the highlight of my academic experience. And thank you, and I'm very sorry to go over. Okay. Sorry. That's very sweet.
Well, Carolyn, what a lifetime of achievement, and what an achievement in our field, especially in cochlear implantation, even before FDA approval. So as a sixth Niparko Memorial Lecture, I'd like to give you something that Donna and the staff organizes. It's from a glass blowing factory in Vermont, and it was Dr. Niparko's favorite shop. Oh. And by the way, the clock that Dr. Rowland received is also from the same shop. So on behalf of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance, we would congratulate you to your achievements, and thank you for your contributions to the field. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, with this, this concludes our program this morning. I'd like to remind everyone that we have a members meeting tomorrow morning, and I'd like to wish everyone a great conference.